Thank you very much for attending today's bidders conference. My name is Abe Christ from the Performance Office at the CSDE. Thank you for taking the time to make it out today. I am joined today by many of my colleagues in the Performance Office. We won't go through introducing everyone, but a couple in particular. You may hear from Michelle Rosado on the webinar this afternoon, who's helping me out just in case I need a hand. Running the webinar, also Jeff Gregg and Katie Seifert will also be presenting from the Performance Office during this conference. A couple of reminders, excuse me, about the meeting. The slide deck should be posted in the chat. If you missed it, we can repost it. It should be there. This meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the portal where our RFP was posted. Attendees are on mute. We ask if you can mute or unmute for some reason to try to keep yourself muted. And please use your raise hand feature during the question phase at the end. We ask, that's how we're going to manage if any questions come in. So today's meeting purpose is to provide an overview of the RFP for the Summative Assessment Contractor for ELA, Math, Science, and Alternate Assessments that we issued earlier in May. We will do an overview and we will also open up for some questions. As a reminder, the RFP can be found off this link that you can link through the chat to get the deck. Please keep in mind that nothing in this PowerPoint presentation shall supersede what is already written in the RFP. And I do want to repeat that nothing in this PowerPoint presentation shall supersede what is already in the RFP. So who is here this afternoon? Again, many of my colleagues in the office who work in the Performance Office are here today. My name is Abe Christ. Here also on this slide, Kim Johnson and Ajit Gopalakrishnan. I'm not sure if Ajit's on yet, but he should be joining us. Also, from our office on the call today is Christy Alberino, Deirdre Ducharme, Jeff Gregg, Michelle Rosado, Katie Seifert. Ray Martin is here today, I believe, too. Yeah, I see Ray. Who else am I missing? Michael Sabatos and Pei Xuan Chu is also here. So thanks to my colleagues. We are all here from the Performance Office. So before we move on, actually, if one representative from each vendor could please introduce yourself so we have a record and also state your company name, we would appreciate it. I will give a minute here. If you could either raise your hand or take yourself off mute and do that, we would appreciate it. Lisa, go ahead. I see your hand up first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lisa Hathaway, Pearson School Assessment.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Next up, I see Tom Gillen.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Gillen from Focal Point.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Next up, I see Snehal.
Yes, this is Snehal Pathak from Cambium Assessment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Snehal. And is there here? So there's three that I've heard. Is there a fourth vendor I know had accepted? Are they on the call?
Hi everyone. I'm Zachary, and I am from Winged.
Okay, thank you, Zachary. Appreciate it. Are there any other, and did anybody else manage to sneak in here without RSVPing? Could you make yourself known?
Hi, this is Bill again. I'm with Zach from Winged.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Same company, yeah.
Yep. All right, thank you, everyone. We appreciate it, and we'll get moving here again. So today's meeting agenda. First off, we will do a quick overview of the RFP. This is a very high-level overview. Vendors should refer to the RFP for full details of what we are looking for. As far as questions go, there will be an opportunity for questions at the end of this presentation. Some questions may be answered during this webinar, and those that are not will be logged and then answered in the FAQ to be posted by June 14th, 2024. We ask that any questions that are asked verbally also be posted in the chat if possible. So as far as the RFP goes, this one sentence summary of the RFP is we are simply seeking proposals from contractors to develop, maintain, and support a statewide standardized assessment platform. Our schedule is as follows. We are doing our bidders conference today, obviously. All letters of intent are due by June 3rd, 2024. Specific directions on who needs to be in receipt of that are in the RFP. Deadlines for questions are also on June 3rd, 2024. Again, specifics of who you would need to send that to and so forth are in the RFP. We will shoot to post our question answers by June 14th, 2024. And then finally, on July 1st, 2024, by 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when the proposals will be due. In order to be eligible for the RFP, the proposals must be received on or before July 1st, 2024 at 3 p.m. as I stated on the prior slide. The RFP the proposals must meet the proposal requirements. The contractor must have submitted a letter of intent, and it must be complete. Any proposals that fail to follow instructions or satisfy the minimum submission requirements may be deemed ineligible for further review. Some of the submission requirements: proposers must submit one electronic proposal and one printed original proposal plus 4 printed copies of the original proposal. Also keep in mind that proposals received after the due date and time may be accepted by the CSDE, but late proposals will not be evaluated. It is permissible, the submission of multiple proposals by an exclusive contractor is not an option for this procurement. However, note that multiple cost options within a single proposal is allowable. It is possible, as related to the 4th bullet, that vendors could be the primary on one submission, proposal submission, and a partner on another one. That is permissible. So here's a timeline. I'm not going to go through every single major activity here because this chart is exactly from the RFP. Should not be a surprise at all. Some of the dates I would like to highlight are once a proposer is accepted, we would like to negotiate and execute the contract as soon as possible. The contract must be executed by May 2025 at the latest. A couple other important dates on this slide. We would like to conduct our first planning meeting by June 2025. And then the window begins on February-March 2026. Okay, for those of you that might be interested, what drives this work? These are the legislative requirements. Both Connecticut General Statutes 10-14N, as well as the Every Student Succeeds Act are outlined here. This is why we are here today. And we'll go, I think this is all self-explanatory. Okay, so what about the assessments that are involved? As articulated in the RFP, there are 4 chunks of work that we are looking to receive help with. First off are the Smarter Balanced assessments. As a reminder, the Smarter Balanced assessments are aligned with the CCS and ELA and math and measure progress towards college and career readiness. In Connecticut, we deliver these assessments in grades 3 through 8. The ELA test is just a computer adaptive test, while the math test is a computer adaptive and has a performance task component. It's important to remember that the contractor will not be responsible for delivering an ELA and math standard assessment in grade 11, as we use another assessment for that use. Okay, I'm going to pass it to two of my colleagues now. We're going to tell us a little bit about our NGSS and our two alternate assessments. Jeff, I'm going to hand you the baton.
Thanks, Abe. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to briefly highlight some things about our science assessments, which we call the Next Generation Science Standards Assessments. These are computer adaptive assessments that are aligned to the NGSS, and we have the link in our slides. And those standards were adopted by the Connecticut State Board of Education back in November 2015. And I'll just note that we adopted those standards as they were. We did not make any changes or adaptations to those standards, as some other states may have done. The NGSS that you see on the website are the Connecticut standards. So the first operational year of the NGSS tests was in the 2018-19 school year, and we administer those tests in grades 5, 8, and 11. And I'll also mention that those assessments are of the grade band, so that would be assessing standards from grades 3 to 5, 6 through 8, and at high school. So those are just some of the highlights of the science assessment. I'll turn it over to Katie.
Thanks, Jeff. Good afternoon, everybody. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our alternate assessments. And our first alternate assessment that we're going to address today is the Connecticut Alternate Assessment, or the CTAA. The alternate assessment supports students' independence to the greatest extent possible by making academic content accessible and the expected achievement levels appropriate. The CTA consists of math and ELA, or English Language Arts, and was developed to ensure that all students with significant cognitive disabilities can participate in an assessment that measures what they know and can do in relation to grade level standards. The CTAA is only administered to eligible students with a significant cognitive disability in grades 3 through 8 and 11. It is a secure test, and it is assessed online with the support of a trained teacher. Now we're going to go into the Connecticut Alternate Science Assessment, or CTAS. The CTAS was developed to ensure that all students with a significant cognitive disability can participate in an assessment that is a measure of what they know and can do in relation to the NGSS. The CTAS includes 6 performance tasks that are intended to be administered throughout the year as the teacher works with the eligible students to rate the student performance on the CTAS core extensions. This alternate science assessment is only administered to eligible students with a significant cognitive disability in grades 5, 8, and 11. The contractor must have a system in place to receive the student responses collected by the trained teacher for scoring and reporting purposes. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Abe.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks, Jeff, for helping out with those. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to walk through the scope of services. The scope of services here outlined are exactly what is in the RFP. There aren't any surprises. We haven't made any additions or amendments. So we'll quickly go through some of the sections. So first, section 1, general requirements. The contractor must annually administer the Smarter Balanced NGSS and alternates for beginning in 2025. The assessment window will run from February, March to early June for all these assessments. The contractor also must administer the Smarter Balanced interim assessments and the NGSS interim assessments beginning in September of each school year and keep the assessment delivery system open until early June. Finally, the contractor must have experience administering tests in this manner, and the contractor will also collaborate with the current assessment contractor to create a transition plan. Next up are the assessments themselves, which would be section 2 through 7. You will find in these sections technical guidance, There's also information on any consortium or MOU that relates to the assessment. There's further guidance on the interim assessments and training materials, and there's also information on item development, which is necessary for NGSS. Moving on to section 8, program management, excuse me. The contractor must outline a clear and sustainable plan for the management of the project for the period covered by this contract. The contractor also must assign a primary program manager to oversee the entire program and must assign 2 assistant program managers to support the primary. Section number 9, platform and system. The contractor must provide a single assessment management system platform for assessment administration, score reporting, housing student data, assessment administration practice, assessment administration training, interim assessment item viewing, and access to the Smarter Balanced tools for teachers. The contractor also must provide an assessment administration that provides all the universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations currently available on the Smarter Balance assessments and NGSS assessments. These must be available on both the interim and summative assessments, and the contractor also must provide practice and training tests. Under documentation, the contractor must document all procedures, processes, business rules, calculations, measures, decision points, decision options, and decision criteria used to develop and perform work under the resulting contract. The contractor also must provide additional secure transfer mechanisms to transfer data and documents between the contractor and the state as needed. It's important to remember that all documents, records, presentations, and other materials produced under this contract shall remain the sole property of the CSDE. Section 11, online and paper reporting. The contractor must develop an online reporting system linked to its assessment administration system to deliver online reports for the assessments. The contractor also must develop a method to deliver paper individual student reports for Smarter Balanced, NGSS, and the alternates. Moving on to section 12, data file transfers. The contractor must provide the outline files in this section in the format at the times specified. And I won't go too far into that because we provided a lot of detail in that section, but we would like the contractor to provide those details articulated there. As far as the next section, consultation, psychometric consultation, the contractor must provide item bank management. The contractor also must establish, implement, and maintain the scoring engine that allows them to use the current psychometric models and scoring methods for the scoring of all the assessments. The contractor also shall support the preparation of psychometrics related discussion with our Connecticut Technical Advisory Committee. And the contractor must develop an annual comprehensive technical report for each assessment. Training, number 14. The contractor must assist and support the CSDE with developing plans and materials for on-site and virtual trainings. And the contractor shall create and collaborate with the CSDE on the supports necessary for summative and interim assessment administration. And then on to section 15, accommodations and accessibility. The contractor must provide a test administration that provides all the supports and accommodations currently available on our Smarter Balance and alternate assessments and NGSS. The contractor also must provide a mechanism for the CSDE to seamlessly load all documented supports and accommodations for students who have an IEP or Section 504 from our CTSEDS platform into the test administration system. And the contractor also must offer a solution for potential remote testing in the event that is necessary in future years. Okay, last few sections. And again, I'm just focusing on some of the highlights in each of these sections. It doesn't represent a comprehensive look at what we are asking for in each of them, but these are the highlights. Section 16, security, the contractor must include data security protocols, requirements for data transfers between the CSDE and the contractor, and the contractor must have a system to handle test irregularities. Assessment, validation, and peer review support. The contractor shall assist the CSDE in planning for the biannual on-site meeting with the CSDE's Technical Advisory Committee. The contractor shall assist the CSDE in preparing for peer review discussions with the TAC. And then finally, from the section, the contractor will assist CSD in collecting and tracking documents as evidence for anything required for federal peer review. And then section 18, the contractor shall ensure quality assurance measures are taken in data prep and with the TDS or the test delivery system and test preparation. And the contractor shall plan for and implement any user acceptance testing that the CSDE asks for. Finally, this is our last slide on the scope of services. I appreciate your patience. As far as communications go, in section 19, the contractor shall assist the CSDE in the items laid out in this section here. For disaster planning, the contractor shall have a plan for potential disasters, and the contractor shall communicate with the CSDE and districts throughout the event. And then finally, data ownership and contractor transition. The CSDE shall retain sole ownership rights and title and interest to all data collected and stored by the contractor or under the resulting contract. The CSDE requires that at the end of the contract, the contractor must transfer all CSDE owned data back to the CSDE or to another entity as requested by CSDE. And finally, the contractor must limit access of student data to only those staff with a verifiable need to access the data. Okay, so that does it for the scope of services. Again, sections 1 through 21 are laid out more explicitly in the RFP if you would like more details. There's also many links to documents within those scope of services sections that you can link to. Excuse me. Next slide, proposal submission outline and requirements. The proposal should contain the following, and again, these are all laid out. This should not be a surprise. These are laid out in the RFP, a cover sheet, a table of contents, an executive summary. The main proposal submission requirements, which include the following bolded items: the description and history of the organization, the response for the scope of services, the staffing plan, any subcontractors, a work plan, a financial profile, and a cost competitiveness and budget narrative. If you have any attachments, a declaration of confidential information, a conflict of interest statement, and then a statement of assurances. As far as the budget goes, proposer should complete a budget proposal in its entirety that will enable the effective delivery of the proposed services. It should present a detailed cost narrative that explains the basis and the rationale for the cost proposed, and it is recommended to use the budget template that's linked here in the RFP, but is not mandatory to use. Again, it's not mandatory to use that. I think this is our last slide. We're at the tail end here. As far as the evaluation process, it is the intent of the CSDE and the Performance Office to conduct a comprehensive, fair, and impartial evaluation of all proposals received in response to this RFP. The CSDE will designate a review committee to evaluate them once received, and proposals meeting the minimum submission requirements will be evaluated according to the established criteria. The criteria are the standards that the review committee will use to evaluate the merits of the proposal. Please see the evaluation criteria specified in the RFP for explicit scoring, for the explicit scoring rubric. Okay, so we've moved on to the next section of the conference. At this time, we would ask that if you have any questions, to please raise your hand. To please try and drop the questions into the chat as well. That would be helpful for us. We will answer some of the questions and may log some of the questions. I believe I stated this earlier in the presentation that if we cannot answer the question at this time, we will table the question and we'll address it in the fact that will be distributed on June 14th. So with that said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. As a reminder, if you're considering questions, well, a couple of comments. Again, the deck is in the chat. If you prefer to just write your questions, again, there's explicit directions in the RFP on how to submit your questions that are due by the 3rd, and we will have a response, or we are shooting for a response by June 14th. Okay, Lisa, you should be able to take yourself off mute and feel free to ask your question.
Thank you, Abe. I'm trying to type it in the chat as well. After the field testing, this is about the next generation science assessment.
Mm-hmm.
After the field testing of MOU items on that assessment, which contractor will be responsible for the data analysis and calibration of the items shared and field tested across the MOU space? And I'm going to type it in the chat too.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Lisa. I would refer you to the MOU that we've linked in the RFP for a more explicit answer to that.
Okay,
and
great.
Jeff, I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything to add, you can feel free to add, or you can also stay on mute too, if that's whatever works. Okay, I guess we'll just stick, again, Lisa, I would refer to the MOU in regards to that. Thank you. If you're pondering questions, I have a few minutes, so I'll wait a little bit here, but we'll just wait a few minutes, and then if there are no questions, we will just call it a bidders conference too. Lisa, thank you for dropping that in the chat. We appreciate that.
Sure, and I consider it answered, but I just wanted to put it in the chat because you asked me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Okay, I think we'll move on here. I would like to thank you all for attending. Again, the next steps, I know that I've said this probably now the 4th time I'll say this, but we just want to make sure everybody's aware of the timeline, that the next steps in this process would be the letter of intent, which is due by Monday, June 3rd. And then we would then provide questions posted on the site or the page where our current RFP is posted. And then we would go from there. But those are the next steps as far as we continue this process. If you have any questions, the way that you would submit those are very specific in the RFP as well. Would any of my colleagues like to add anything? Otherwise, I think we will end a few minutes early and give you 30 minutes back on this Friday afternoon. Okay, thanks, everyone. We're going to end the bidders conference. Have a nice Friday afternoon and a good weekend.